Another week, another podcast here, another fishing podcast. I'm with Spencer Bauer today, river certified. This guy's got an awesome guiding operation and also a hell of a social media following going right now. Super impressed with this guy. We're going to have a great conversation talking catfish, multi-species. This guy does it all. Let's get into it.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
Spencer, dude. So first and foremost, when I first started getting into this social media thing with my buddy Pete, you followed us, we followed you, and I'm an idiot, right? Like when I had no idea how this social media thing was going to blow up. I knew I was excited about it. You know, Facebook was offering video, YouTube was just on fire, but Pete and I really started doing, you know, our videos and our podcasting before we even really understood the power of social media and YouTube. And really, we're a bunch of old guys that were just kind of fumbling around, not knowing exactly what to do, knowing we wanted to do videos and just put our stuff out there, but not knowing how to do it. And still this day, we're still fumbling. But I remember like those early days, you started following us, and I was seeing what you're doing. You're based down in Iowa, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you're running a guiding operation. See, I'm doing a different kind of. If you're watching the video podcast, I need to switch from my camera to Spencer's camera. So I got to remember to do that. Now I'm switching to Spencer's camera.
You're drinking.
What's that?
You're drinking while you're doing
and I'm drinking, so it makes it even more difficult. So, but I just remember, you know, you doing your thing in Iowa, doing a lot of catfishing, and now it's just like I'm such an idiot. Pete's a musician. He's also a fisherman, obviously, but he's you know, got a band and he's doing a lot of touring now. And I'm finally, I feel like getting a handle on the social media finally, and all these guys that were following us, you know, kind of in the beginning are blowing up. Your YouTube channel is like blown up. You're over 100,000 subscribers. I want to like get into that and just tell me your own kind of experience being a passionate fisherman and then delving into social media, YouTube, and kind of how, you know, what your experience has been with all of that.
My biggest thing is I just make it fun. And I've never had an agenda or any like real direction I've wanted to go. I just try to make things better. I enjoy getting better at stuff. And so I just making the videos fun. I made the social media fun, and then just try to get a little bit better at it all the time. And aside from that, I don't put a whole lot of thought into it. I mean, there's strategy that I've learned as I've done it more and more. And I kind of think of it a lot like fishing, because I mean, I keep track of bites based on a variety of different conditions. Then I try to track my videos and the things that do well based on this, that, and the other thing. I try to replicate, and then the other stuff, like if it doesn't do well, I try not to do it again, or try to re-present it, I guess, because all the videos I do is like stuff I've always done and really enjoyed doing, and I just document it. So I don't know, it's pretty simple.
How did you actually get you know, started into fishing? It's kind of I mean, I ask this question every single time, and maybe it's getting redundant, but
well, everyone's got a different story. So the same question, different story, and then different highlights or interesting factors based on the individual answering it. So the question might be repeated, but the answer is unique for most people. At least, you know, the details will be varied.
Yeah. So how'd you get started?
Well, my dad took me fishing. He wasn't a big fisherman, but he was like presented me with opportunities to try a bunch of different stuff. And one funny thing is, when I was a little kid, I was actually scared of fish. There's a picture of my dad holding me in one arm and a bluegill in the other, and I'm just bawling my eyes out. But as far as when the actual transition from that happened to me really, really liking fishing, I'm not sure. My grandpa, he had, I think, 2 strokes and like 3 heart attacks before he ended up,
Oh, wow.
passing away. But after his first stroke, he walked a bunch all over town, and he'd pick up beer cans and cigarette packs off the side of the road and then save them. And I had like a Marlboro sleeping bag that he got from sending in all these cigarette packs. But
I remember that. I had buddies that would like, they would, what was that called? Marlboro Bucks or something. I remember that in like the early 90s or something. They would get duffel bags. All my buddies were like smoking so much so that they could get these like, like Marlboro like gifts or whatever. I remember that stuff.
Yeah. And well, the spin-off of that is I would go hang out with my grandpa, and we'd go on walks, and he knew I liked fishing. So we'd walk to a farm pond and then catch, there's this farm pond that he had permission to go, and had all these dinky little bass. And I'd spend the afternoon catching these dinky little bass, and he'd sit under this tree that had a tire around it. So he'd sit on the tire, lean against the tree in the shade, and eat an apple, and I'd show a fish, and he'd cheer me on. And that was kind of one of my favorite summertime activities for the time that he lived close to us. And that just kind of stoked the fire. Like, I think the fire was there, but then all these little things just kept adding onto it. And I just had lots of opportunities to get outside and go. And I grew up in a cool little town that had a little creek close by, and that was reading in fishermen and stuff, getting deep into it. Catfishing was always something that struck me, because they got big and they fought harder than anything else in the farm pond. And you catch a few in the farm pond, but to be able to go fish the creek when I got old enough to do that, that was kind of like the gloves came off, and I went really hard and fished all up and down that creek everywhere.
So it was your grandpa who really was most responsible for getting you into fishing?
I don't think I'd categorize one or the other, but my grandpa and my dad, for sure, both of them. That's just, the grandpa memory is just the one I smile at, looking back at, For sure, yeah. I had a lot of my grandpa. He didn't fish, but he would take Pete and I. He'd drive us all around, and he one time, remember, he was like sleeping. It was like super hot, and he was like sleeping under his car because there wasn't any other shade around. And while we were fishing. So yeah, like I have a lot of great memories of my grandpa taking me fishing growing up. And you said In Fisherman was like a huge impact on me. Growing up reading Doug Stange stories with him and Otis and Zach, or Otis Toad Smith and Zach, or like, that stuck with me. And a lot of the streams I fish are real comparable to the ones that they fish, because like I'm in central Iowa, they were in northwest Iowa, southern Minnesota, and there's just a lot of crossover to all the information they passed along and how I fish. Like the riffle hole run theory, I first learned it from reading Doug Stange articles, and that was just like a light bulb moment. Holy crap. And then I just applied it, then tried to build upon it ever since then. But yeah, I'm a big In Fisherman nerd.
So explain that to people that don't know. Explain that riffle hole run theory, because I think if you learn that, if you understand that, you're going to be such a better river fisherman. And by the way, your guiding business is called River Certified, correct? And your social media?
Yep, everything's River Certified, because I'm not very smart. So if I keep it all named the same thing, I don't have to worry about going one direction or the other with everything. But as far as the riffle hole goes, it's hydrology and geology. Like, you have, as water flows over different substrates in a riverbed, it'll flow over a piece where the bottom is mostly rock, and it'll have a harder time eroding away at that. So the water will be shallower, faster, and then it shoots through those riffles and then scours a hole out downstream. And eventually that water reduces in speed And then you have a run where it's pretty much uniform depth until you hit your next riffle. That's one concept, and it expands beyond that because like you have a bend in the river, and then the current hits that outside bend and also scours out a hole. The holes are where catfish live, in structures where catfish live, because I mean it's hydrology. Anytime you have water coming across an obstruction or changing rate of flow, it's going to scour. Like if it increases or decreases, it's going to change the depth of the water around it, and catfish relate to all that. I didn't know we were going to get this sciencey on this.
Oh, well, no, I mean, it's, I want to, I've been in the industry, the fishing industry, as a videographer since 2000, right? So, I mean, I've shot so many tips. I've done a lot of different, different kinds of shoots, different species. And I've gotten, I sort of got burnt out by doing so many tips, right? I was like, gosh, don't people know this by now? But what I failed to, there's new people coming up every time that don't know these things, You
only know what you know, too. There's some things that seem so obvious to you or me, or we don't know, and then would seem obvious to somebody else. Like, and it's all based on your background and your personal experiences. So like growing up on small streams, yeah, I feel comfortable there, but then I go fish the Mississippi and Missouri, or the Ohio or Tennessee or any of those giant bodies of water, and they're freaking intimidating. And if you grew up on them, sure, like you have all this background knowledge and understanding of how fish do this, that, or the other thing, but then you go to a small stream and you're like, huh. Although I would argue it's easier to break down a small stream than it is a big river, but the concept, you only know what you know, and that's based on what you grew up doing.
Exactly. Yeah, so I try to, I've got to like step out of myself and go, listen, dumbass, like there's a lot of, especially now, there's a lot of new anglers coming in, into, new people coming into fishing. And also just the fact that fishing is so varied. There's so many different species you can go after. So, this podcast and just our angling uploaded bigger social media account, whatever the hell you want to call them, platforms, it's more of a broader kind of multi-species idea that we're doing here. So it can be like, there's all kinds of species to go after, freshwater species, and I'm all about going after, rough fish too. I think even the term is ridiculous. I got into fishing, and you're probably
isn't that bad though? Like, I think a rough is kind of an endearing term. If somebody calls me rough around the edges, I'm like, yeah, but maybe that's bad, maybe that's good, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's good. I agree. I use the term rough fish. Some people might like find it derogatory, tough, but what's that?
Like rough and tough, like I kind of like. I like to think of myself as kind of tough,
Yeah, you look
probably.
tough. You have, I can see you as being tough. We've had some interaction. Like, this guy's like no nonsense, no bullshit. Let's get right to it. Well, it's kind of, we're having some problems with the link to start this podcast, and you're like, are we going to do this or what, man? And I'm like, I like this. Man. This guy's straightforward. Let's do this podcast. Well, let's go. What do you think my time is?
On my end too, because like I sent you the email, and then you obviously sent it to that email, and then I remembered, oh yeah, I never checked that one.
Yeah.
So I should probably look at it. Then I looked at it and I didn't see the link, but I'm sure it's just buried in the 10,000 emails that are in there because I never checked that account.
No worries at all. So on that kind of rough fish, topic. Did you, when you're scouring through the pages of In Fisherman, which I'm sure we're a little bit different age. You look younger than I am. I got quite a bit. I'm looking at your beard, and then I'm looking at my beard. There's I don't know what's going. I'm starting to look like a Thundercat now. I've got like this gray right here. It's like perfectly symmetrical. Only gray here. I realize if you're only listening to the audio podcast, you can't see any of this, and then I got like a gray patch right here. So that's telling me I'm quite a bit, I'm older than you. Let's put it that way.
See, I would describe that. I mean, you're becoming a silver fox.
Thank you.
What's happening. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you just embrace it, and good things are going to happen.
I like that perspective. So did you find yourself, perusing through the pages of In Fisherman or watching the TV show. Did you love it when they would do shows or write articles on carp or catfish? And was it annoying to you, especially like early on, or maybe just in general? Was it annoying to you when they you're like bass? Like every show is bass. It's like, who cares about this? I actually felt this way early on. I was like, I want to see articles, watch television shows that are featuring fish that are near me that I can target, which was at the time was catfish and carp and that kind of thing.
But bass are everywhere. Like, probably one of the first fish I ever caught was a bass. I'm sure the first fish I ever caught was a bluegill, but it was probably shortly followed up by a bass, and then it was bass are bigger. They fight harder than a bluegill. Maybe not pound for pound, you have that argument, but they're just available. And like, I got the chance to go to ICAST one summer, which was a really cool experience. And then it puts into perspective how big bass fishing is. Like, you have this whole pie of the fishing industry, and like 2/3 of it is bass, and then everything else is crammed into that other third. You realize how enormous that culture is. But it makes sense. You have a fish that gets a little bit bigger, fights a little bit harder, but they're available for everybody everywhere. I totally get it. And then if you're a media company that's trying to showcase multi-species fishing, you kind of have to showcase it based around the percentage of your audience that enjoys these certain things if you want to keep your ratings the way they are. Like, I totally get it. So, but the way I looked at it, when there was a catfishing show, it was kind of like a treat. And I would watch In Fisherman regularly because they hit all those multi-species. And I enjoyed the other stuff like muskies or sweet. Not that I really fish for them, but to see them get caught and to see other people fish for them, I thought that was pretty cool. And then walleyes, I love walleye fishing, so I'd see that on TV. I thought that was neat. And then I guess that's what pulled me to In Fisherman, was the multi-species side of things. And then Bill Dance, he would fish for catfish every once in a while. Sometimes it was like farm ponds. And then as time went on, he did more big water stuff, which was really intriguing. And a few other shows would do catfishing every once in a while. But I thought of it as a treat, honestly.
Yeah, no, I get you. So is that who you were, was In Fisherman, who was, In Fisherman too is kind of a northern, more of a, I don't know. I mean, they're
traveled everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they traveled everywhere. But I think as a Minnesotan, I was especially like just proud of, In Fisherman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was addicted to everything that they were doing, But did you kind of like, so when you were growing up, or as you got into maybe your teens, like, so how old were you when you first started fishing, you think? Like, how?
I mean, I was pretty young. I don't know. Whenever my dad took me, when I was probably 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that range. And we would go camping. Like, we would go to campgrounds at some lakes down in my area, and everybody'd go boating, and I'd just stay at the dock and fish.
Yeah.
on the fish cleaning dock that said no fishing. That's where you can find me, because that's where the catfish would be.
That's a great tip. That's a pro tip of the week right there.
It just, I figure if a 10-year-old can process that, most people can.
Let's hope so anyway. Right. So then you got into your teens. What were you, when I was in my teens, I was like, so what happened for me? So I was all keyed up. In Fisherman really stoked the fires, and then I saw in a bait shop, I saw a flyer for Bassmasters. I'm like, what the hell is this? There's such a thing as competitive fishing, and then I just blew up, and then I wanted to be a professional bass fisherman. Did you fish a bunch of tournaments? What's that?
Did you fish a bunch of tournaments?
I did growing up. Yeah. I was eating up with it. I used to live in Pennsylvania. I fished the Pennsylvania State Federation. I qualified for the state, whatever the hell it was called, the championship or whatever. And I won I was in a bass club. I won our bass club one year and things like that. And really, I went to college I wanted to, college was my fault. Like what I was studying in college, which was communications, broadcasting, that was my fallback plan. That was my plan B. I actually wanted to pursue, a professional fishing career, a bass fishing career. And I mean, I graduated college, went to Bass Pro Shops, got a job there with the idea I'd be there for a little bit, learn, get good hands-on, learning experience there, and then use my contacts there and go and, jump into the world of professional bass fishing. What happened to me is a combination of seeing the realities of that, what it's like, actually being a professional bass fisher. What's that?
Ever. It's like the roughest career ever.
People don't, and I love it. Like, I really love the sport. I film for I'm a freelance videographer, and one of my main clients is Major League Fishing. I love it. I love the sport, and I want what's best for the sport. I really care about it. But it's, in my line of work as a videographer, I'm an editor. What we do is we make a somewhat glossy interpretation of reality. Not somewhat. My job is to make a glossy, perfect. Anything I do professionally is to make a very it's a glossy representation of real life, and so it's But when you see the realities of what that life really is. And it also, there was also this is kind of funny, but there was a relationship that I was in. I did really well in a BFL tournament on Bull Shoals. I used to live down in Springfield, Missouri. And I nearly won a BFL tournament, and I was all stoked and jacked up, and the girlfriend that I was with at the time, she was like, "Oh my God, this guy's way too into this, and he's not going to have enough time for me." And I'm really simplifying this, but it was the end of our relationship because of that. And all those things, seeing the reality and knowing, this is kind of sappy, I guess, but that was kind of the first time I had ever, been in love. And I know, right? I didn't know that we were going to go here. But
this makes it better. Keep going.
Yeah, right. You got to gush, man. You gotta just share it all. But I realized two things. I realized that it's making a living fishing, particularly if you want to be a competitive bass fisherman or any kind of competitive fisherman. There is a ton of travel. There's a ton of time away from home. And just me as a videographer covering professional bass fishing, I'm away from home a lot. 50% of the time I'm gone.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, and
you have the travel side of it without all of the prestige, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I'm the guy that's in the back of the boat that's making these guys look good. Obviously these guys they're damn good. I also would argue that the camera guys are, do a lot of that. And the editors and everybody are, it's part of the business, right?
You better, you don't get a job.
That's exactly right. And so I just saw, I saw the reality of the business, and I thought to myself, I would like to, I wasn't as enamored with the sport after I was immersed into it. As far as that, the travel and that aspect of it, being away from home so much, but also the fact that it's incredibly taxing on a relationship or a family. And I put more, I just started to put more emphasis on, that of what I really kind of thought, I matured in a way that I learned what I wanted in life. I was a young, God, I was in my mid-20s or so. I didn't know jack shit. Seriously. I think about it. I'm 46 now. There was a lot of learning and maturing to do, and that's what happened. But I'm very happy with how things worked. But I don't know how, what the hell? What were we talking about here? So back to you, Spencer.
Tournaments. We were talking about
tournaments. Yeah. So that's kind of what, for me, I was jacked up about tournaments, growing up. And so that's kind of where I wanted to go with my life. What were you kind of thinking? Because obviously you're a passionate fisherman. You've been a passionate fisherman for a long time. What happened with you, like around that, teens? I remember I put a lot of pressure on myself going, I got to do this. I got to try to figure out a way to fish for a living. What were you thinking at that time? Did you want to pursue a career in fishing?
I thought the idea sounded cool. I just didn't think it was possible. Like, I grew up in a little town, about 1,000 people, and there was people who worked at a 3M plant. There was people who built windows at Pella windows. There was people who were teachers. There was people who farmed. There was a few different professionals, like a few doctors, but always people a lot of these people would live in the town and then work in a different town. I don't know. There's a name for those types of towns. I can't remember, but the idea of being a professional fisherman, I had this dream of always having my own fishing show. But I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have any resources, and information even then was a lot less readily available than it is now. And just the idea of trying to figure it out didn't really resonate with me because I just didn't think it was possible. So I ended up I had a really cool science teacher, and I like science. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be a science teacher.
Not to interrupt, but I knew you liked science because you used the term substrate.
Yeah. It's not even, it's only 2 syllables. It seems like a complex word, but it's not too bad. Or I guess hydrology. I'm kind of a hydrology nerd, not super duper into it, but I know enough to be able to apply that to fishing, and you get a better idea of what it looks like underwater, at least, especially in rivers. As far as reading the water, it all falls back on hydrology, and the better you understand those concepts, you can apply them on the river. But as far as growing up, I just like to fish. I played a bunch of sports. I did football, wrestling, track, baseball, so I was busy with that. I mowed yards, and then mowing yards was sweet because I mowed yards whenever I had time, or I mowed yards when I wanted to do it. I didn't have a set work schedule, so I could do all that stuff, fish, and have a little bit of money on the side. But aside from that, I was just, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to be a teacher. I love fishing. I'll fish when I can. Got to college, fished a fair amount, got big into land-based shark fishing because we went down to Florida for spring break, and I was like, it's the ocean. I want to catch a shark. And I ended up catching one. It was about 6.5 foot long sandbar. And as soon as that happened, I'm like, I need to do this again and again and again. And the internet had obviously gotten bigger, and there was a lot of information and forums out there, and I dove into those, and actually spent 2 summers living in South Texas for the sole purpose of catching sharks when I was in college.
Wow.
And then during the school year, I wrestled in college. So during the school year, I wrestled, fished when I could. During the summer, I was down in South Texas shark fishing and working out, and then working at the local Red Lobster in Brownsville, Texas.
Did they, at that time, did they have those amazing biscuits, those lobster biscuits?
The first 2,000 or 3,000 you eat are pretty good. And then after that, they kind of lose their luster.
Well, that's kind of with anything, right? I would imagine you eat 2,000-3,000 of anything, it would. But boy, I've been in I haven't been in Red Lobster in a while, but man, the last time I was there, I had those delicious lobster biscuits, and I mean that's reason enough to go into a Red Lobster. If you haven't been into Red Lobster, just go in for their freaking biscuits, and they're free. It's like tortilla chips; they give them to you free.
I've noticed that concept doesn't seem to apply to Busch Light because I continue to drink that, and the last one I had I enjoyed as much as the first one I ever had.
I think that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And there's the problem with those Red Lobster biscuits, is that they don't make you feel funny in the head. You can eat a ton of them.
That's true. They just make you really, really fat, really, really fast.
Right. That's a great point. So you're in okay. So you're in college, and you're like, okay, you're fishing as much as you can, and so what are you still? So what did you in college? What did you study? You may have already said that. I apologize. What were you studying in college? Did it have anything to do with your love of fishing?
Kind of biology.
Okay. Yeah.
Biology and secondary education.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay. So then now, let's fast forward to where we are right now and what we know about you, Spencer, because I've kind of known you I'm getting to know you on a deeper level. I've known you on a superficial social media level. But how did you, so you have a guiding business, right? Is that full time, or are you, do you have a real job, or is the guiding business full time now?
I do a lot of things part-time. So I was a teacher for 9 years and then started doing the YouTube thing. And I'd always dreamed of kind of being a fishing guide. I remember there was an In Fisherman article, and what was that guy's name? It was like Shipley or something. They talked about catfishing guides in the article, and that was where it really clicked that maybe that's something I could possibly do to fish for a living. But then again, it was one of those things where it just seemed impossible. And I enjoy teaching. I really do. So
what are you teaching?
I was teaching junior high science.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I guess backtrack. So I read this article when I was like 12. So I wanted my own fishing show. I thought being a guide would be cool. And then get older, don't think those are possible. Never met anyone that did those things. It felt like winning the lottery to be able to do that. I had no idea where to begin, so I didn't even think about it. Became a teacher after college, taught for a while, ended up being 9 years. But my wife got me a camera for a birthday present, and I'm like, well, I should use it. And then I used it, and then I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this footage? Maybe I'll edit it. And then I found out I really liked video editing. It's fun. And then I edited a video. Where am I going to put it? I threw it on YouTube, and then some people were watching it, and that was neat. And I just started doing that more and more and more. And I built a little bit of an audience. And then it got to the point where I'm like, I could leverage this audience, like all these people enjoy watching the video, to build a clientele base for guiding. And then I was thinking, well, if I do the guiding thing and YouTube and all the other stuff I do, I'm probably not going to have time to teach. So I need to either, it's like shit or get off the pot type deal. And about a year and a half ago, I said, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. And so I've been a fishing guide / YouTube guy / podcast guy / which I'll promote my podcast. It's the River
absolutely. I want you to. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
If you guys want to check that out. And then I do some writing, not a ton, but a little bit. And then I help with social media for a tackle company, and I don't know, just a handful of little things that add up to a livable wage currently.
So first and foremost, I want to tell you, like, as a guy, that kind of got into the industry before social media and YouTube, and a guy that I've said this on podcasts previously, but when my favorite show, like mainstream show, was The Real World. Like the first 2 seasons, I was addicted to that show because there was nothing like it on TV. It was like
so cringy, man. Like so.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's totally cringy.
Yeah, it's so scripted, and they make it sound like it's a real thing, but it's you watch half an episode, it's obvious these people don't exist.
But this was before really the advent of like reality shows, and reality shows are bullshit. There's no doubt. But like the first 2 seasons of The Real World on MTV was like, oh my God, this hadn't been done before, and they're just like, it's really funny to think about it now because. I know that a lot of that was scripted, but I liked the idea of things just being, instead of the gloss, it was like just being real. And granted, I've been trained to professionally, right? So that's why I have the lights here. I got a backlight back here. I got a set and everything. I can't get that. It's like ingrained. It's been beaten into me. So I can't get out of that, right?
Do you think some of that influence comes from In Fisherman?
Totally. But yeah, like In Fisherman, dude, like, I mean, In Fisherman, their articles, everything was just A+. Their articles, Doug Stange is my favorite outdoor writer.
Think about it, though. All the media that comes from Minnesota is so In Fisherman-esque. Like, there's a YouTube channel, Northwoods Angling, very In Fisherman-like. And then one of the dudes off of there, Luke Henches, when he makes his videos, he tries to like introduce. His introductions are very In Fisherman, and then In Depth Outdoors is from up there. They're very In Fisherman-like. And then you, like the stuff you do, it's kind of bleeds off of how In Fisherman started doing it. And it's just such a Minnesota thing. I find it entertaining.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, like I learned video production at Bass Pro Shops in the Bass Pro Shops video department at the Bass Pro headquarters in Springfield, Missouri. And who I learned video production from, Steve Hargis was my boss. And Steve, he learned outdoor production. He modeled outdoor production from In Fisherman. So how they were doing their shows make it look like there's multiple cameras in the boat, and it's all one camera. So
really?
Yeah. So that was my style, and so
do you have to stage a bunch of stuff when you do it like that?
Let's call them reenactments.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happens is in that style of production, you can't always be recording, right? So. You would run out of battery. At that time, we had beta SP tape. We had tape, we weren't recording to cards, right? So you couldn't just be recording all the time. Beta tape was 30 minutes long. Like you would blast through, especially if it was a muskie shoot, you're out there from dawn to dusk. So you can't.
So how much does a beta tape cost? Like you burn through 30 minutes on that thing, and how much money?
I mean, I can't even remember what a beta tape was. Maybe at that time, and no one used beta anymore. But it was, at that time, it was probably, I don't know, $15 a tape, something like that. Maybe.
Oh man!
I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's high. Maybe that's high.
Whatever. So it's $10.
It was expensive because it was professional broadcast quality. This wasn't super VHS. This wasn't VHS or super VHS Beta SP was the standard, and it was professional quality. It was these big professional cameras, and so yeah, it was expensive. So what would happen is you would basically be recording. If you're recording a tip, obviously you're sitting down with the angler and your first shot, and this is how I filmed. So let's say you're doing a tip, right? I would film a wide shot of the tip, of the angler giving the tip.
Just the tip?
Just the tip. and once that tip was over, then we'd come in and we'd get the close-ups, right? And this was like, let's say he's talking about how to rig a soft bait onto a jig head or something like that, whatever. And so I would then come in to just solely focus on like his hands and the tightness, how he's rigging that bait, right? So a lot of times you'd rig up a whole different bait, and you would try to make it like it's live, like it was happening, like there was two cameras on the boat. So you'd try to make it look like like it was really like happening, like there was two cameras, like it was just live happening, right? Well, it's only one camera. You shot the wide, and then you're coming in afterwards getting the close-ups. And so you're trying to you do little tricks where you have the hands come into the shot, it makes it easier. It kind of gives you an edit point that'll make it, when you get into the editing room, it'll make it look like it's two cameras and it's all live, and so with a fish catch, what would happen is oh my God, let's say it's a muskie shoot, right? Shit hits the fan. All of a sudden, the guy's got a fish on. You know, you're swinging around. You get the cam. You start recording, and you're getting all the fish catch, right? And you get everything. You're capturing everything. You're zooming into the fish in the water, zooming out, going up to the close-up. However much time you have in that fish fight, you can zoom in, get a close-up of the fight. If you've got a great big fish, it's wonderful. Like, let's say a sturgeon or something, you can get all kinds of cutaways. You can get close-up of the person's face, the reel close-up, the rod bending over. All of these things are super easy if you have a fish that takes a long time to get into the boat. Right? So you can edit in the editing room, you can edit all these things together, makes a really captivating edit. If like a bass or something, or a fish that comes in quicker, you've got to do reenactments. Okay? So what that means is, so you miss the hook set, right? So what you can do is you can, the fish has already been caught and released and everything. You can go, okay, now we're going to do reenactments of that fish catch. And you basically, if there's two people on the boat, let's say, there's two guys on the boat, you would focus on the other angler, and you could just get that person's reaction of, oh my God, you're hooked up, and so you have that beginning of the fish fight sequence, cut to the angler hooked up, and then get right into it. How I would do it is I would just basically follow that second angler through the whole sequence of that fish catch, that was happening. So I'm gonna be like, okay, we're gonna do a fish catch reenactment right now. I'm just gonna focus on you, the second angler, and what you're gonna do is you're going to react to the guy up front catching a fish. And I'm just going to get you reacting. I'm going to get you grabbing the net. I'm going to get you then just focus solely on you, isolated on you. I'm going to get you netting, acting like you're netting the fish, right? So you give the editor all of these edit points to work with to make a really captivating edit. You can like quick cuts and everything. If you don't have a second angler to do that, then you can get a close-up of the angler that caught the fish. You can get a close-up of his reel, and then pulling back and setting the hook, faking it. And whether that's ethical or whatever, that can be debated. Again, TV is mythical, unicorns and butterflies and rainbows. I can't tell people this enough. Like, when you watch television, and this is the beauty of the internet, because I think it's more authentic. People are going to the internet more, YouTube especially, it's more genuine, it's authentic. But how I was brought up in the industry, reenactments were just how you made television. And so that's, that's how production was done in the day. I'm glad. In many ways, YouTube annoys the hell out of me, but I think if we can get to a place where things are more real and people are being more honest, I think that's a good thing.
Sure.
So that was a long rambling speech, but that's basically how it was, how video production was done with one camera. Yeah. So like you can like look back on a fishing show now, and like an in fisherman, and you'll see it. That's exactly how it's done. That's how I learned how to shoot. So, how did you make that transition? So you made that transition from, teaching to jumping into, guiding and doing YouTube full time. Tell me how, like, was that that had to be a pretty, just a stressful thing to do. Like, how did you determine that now's the time? Let's give this a go.
When I did it, it wasn't supposed to be the time. But things started clicking on YouTube, and I was like, "There's an opportunity here. There's potential." And I was crunching a bunch of numbers, and I went over the numbers I don't know, dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And that's not any exaggeration, because like teaching, other than the teaching part, which I enjoyed, the other nice part that I enjoyed was the consistent income. And then the benefits of teaching are pretty solid. They're not what they were, but they're pretty good. And if I were to go out on my own, all those benefits are gone and the consistent paycheck's gone. So my plan was to come up with as many forms of income, as many different income revenue streams as possible, to basically solidify my whole, I guess if you want to call it a business, where, if one thing's trending down, well, hopefully there's something else that's clicking, and it just makes it much more stable, or in theory it should. And then I talked it over with my wife a bajillion times, and she thought it sounded solid. And then I talked it over with several other people, and they're like, well, it sounds good, go do it. And I just said, you know what, screw it, I'm going to give her a rip. And that's where we're here, or where we're at right now. I'm still giving it a rip. So
did you basically, was it your YouTube channel? I know you have, so basically you have a Facebook page, you have an Instagram account, and you have YouTube, right? Am I forgetting any?
TikTok. I have TikTok.
TikTok. Yep. So that's that's all River Certified is the name of your social media, right?
Yeah, everything. Yeah, everything's River Certified.
Okay, so was it your social media? Were you also guiding at the time as well? So were you guiding and doing social media, or was it mostly social media that you're doing, and then you're like, okay, I always wanted to guide, I can just move that into guiding? Or what was that process like?
I originally just did all the social media stuff, and as that grew up and I was able to generate an income off of that, like, I thought I could make that work. Maybe, there's so many unknowns with that, but the guiding became a means of being on the water full time. Because I was like, well, if I can book so many trips, even if this other stuff shits out, then I'll still be able to make at least somewhat of a living on the water, which is, at the end of the day, that's all I really wanted. Like, I don't have to be fishing all the time. I just like being out there. Oh, so yeah, the guiding kind of became a means to an end, and a convenient means to an end, because it was something I always wanted to do. And that's been hopping pretty good, almost too good. I'm almost too busy.
With the guiding?
Yeah, and I kind of overextended myself a little bit on that. So I don't know, just life's a whirlwind right now, because this is the middle of the guiding season, and people are been lucky. People have been getting a hold of me pretty regularly, want me to take them out on trips. And,
so tell me about your guiding operation. So what bodies of water do you focus on, and what species do you cover?
It's all based in central Iowa. Our waterways are weird because we have such a heavy agricultural influence, even beyond most other states. Our waterways just go up and down so much. Like, every rain, they're shooting up and they're immediately dropping. So like, I don't have a home ramp. I don't have a home body of water. I can't, because, at one time this river's unfishable, but you can fish this river. Or you can't hit the rivers because they're really, really low or really, really high, and then you got to go to a reservoir or a lake or something like that. But basically, any waterway in central Iowa is where I'm guiding out of. And as far as species go, the main targets, everybody wants a flathead. And so most of my trips are focused on flatheads, but then we fish for channel cats along with those. And then I've gotten more and more people interested in fishing for hybrid striped bass, which, I love flatheads. I'd say flatheads are my favorite, but there's days catching hybrid stripers where I'm like, these might be the coolest fish in the Midwest. And I just put a video out, what's today? So yesterday, catching some hybrids on live bait. And the way they make a drag scream is pretty impressive. Then they're pound for pound, just ridiculous fighters. They're half a saltwater fish. They're half striped bass, half white bass. They're basically a frankenfish, and they get all the mean characteristics of both their parents. And then they get big. Like our state record's 20 pounds, and a 10-pound hybrid striper fights as hard or harder than a 20-pound flathead. Well, maybe not that hard. Flatheads have the endurance, which is impressive too. But wipers have speed. They smoke topwaters. They'll hit cut bait. They'll hit live bait. I mean, they're miniature striped bass in a lot of ways, and I just freaking love them. And then I'll book some walleye trips. We don't have a wonderful walleye fishery. If somebody's like, "Hey, take me walleye fishing," I'm gonna say, "Well, on your way to driving to Iowa, just skip Iowa and go to Minnesota or Wisconsin or South Dakota, because you're going to have a great time walleye fishing up there. If you want to fish with me, like, it's tough, and you'll have some good days and some bad days like anywhere else, but a bad day in Iowa is pretty bad. Like, there's days where you just don't catch them. And we don't have a ton of them.
So you were talking about hybrid striped bass, wipers, or they are a really impressive fish, because they're almost like a striper has a more slender body, so they're a cross between a striped bass and a white bass.
Yeah.
So you have the best of like a striped bass and a white bass. A white bass is more like compact, kind of like a body, more like a bluegill or a sunfish. Yeah. And everybody knows, like, a bluegill sunfish, they fight pound for pound. They are incredible fighters. Just that body style makes it so they just use it to just fight, like, they're like kind of like a pan, like they can just use it to.
So you take that and then you add the speed. And the thing with the hybrids is when they're younger, they're actually more cylindrical, like longer, thinner, cylindrical fish. And then as they get bigger, they hit that 7-8 pound mark. They start to get the breadth and height of like a white bass, and you get them over in that 10 to 15 pound range. And I call them hubcaps at that point in time, because they're big and tall, and not only do they use that width, or I guess that height in the current to dart back and forth, they're really freaking fast. Like, they bust off a run and they're just gone. They're like rockets. And I don't know, I get all jacked up thinking about them. That's actually what I'm going to do after this. I'm going to go chase hybrids this evening.
So are you fishing for them in the same areas, or that you? Well, I mean, obviously they have different habitat than a flathead catfish, but are you fishing it for wipers in, like, the same bodies of water that you're fishing for flatheads and stuff?
Yeah, the DNR does a pretty good job of stocking them here. Obviously, I'd like to see more, but when you break down the fisheries biology, you can't have it all. So you take what you get, and it is what it is. But they're in pretty much every river in central Iowa, and then every reservoir in most lakes. So they're pretty readily available. Different bodies of water have different attributes. Like, some have more, some have bigger, some have a nice balance of both. And then we have different river sections segmented by dams that, this section of river is really good and this section of river isn't quite as good, or vice versa. So yeah, they're around in most places. Just some are better than others.
So what, you're running a successful guiding operation now, and it might, because it's newer, and it's sounds like with any newer operation, there's a lot of stress involved. But I've worked with a lot of guides, and it sounds like what you're doing is exactly what you need to be doing. I mean, it's the ups and
it's up for debate, and what is success. It just depends on your perception of success. Our bodies of water are tough. I do my best to put people on fish every trip, and for the most part, we're always catching something. It's not always the target species. On some days it's fishing. Some days are better than others. But my goal every trip is make sure it's a good freaking time. Everybody's having a good freaking time.
Yeah. So I what would be as you've pursued this, part of your career, what would be some advice that you could give to someone who wanted to start a guide business?
Well, you talked about the glamorization of tournament angling. I feel like guiding's kind of like that. People romanticize this lifestyle, and you forgo a lot of things that if you have just a regular job, you would get to enjoy, like friends. You don't get to see friends anymore, or family members. You have to like put time to the side in order to make sure you go see. Like I put this weekend to the side, and I did this months ago. This weekend is to go see my grandparents, who I haven't seen in months, and just little things like that. Sleep. If you like to sleep, maybe this isn't the lifestyle for you.
Especially for catfish. I mean, so much of it is like it's at night.
Yeah, it can be. I guess my big thing is I'm just trying to get better. Like I catch fish, but can I be more consistent during the day? Because that would like put myself in more of a routine. Whereas like right now, there's lots of times I'll run a night trip 6 to midnight, and then have a wiper trip 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. the next day. So I'll just sleep in my boat for 4 hours and wake up and run a wiper trip, then stay out on the water and record a video, come home and edit it, and then.
That's impressive, dude.
Well, is it impressive or dumb? It's like.
Well, I mean, you look at anybody starting a business, like that's what it is. It's tremendous sacrifice to get a business up and running, whether it's a guiding business. I mean, you're doing two. You're doing guiding, and you're doing social media. You're doing YouTube. You have dude. Let me tell you something. I have been knocking my head against the wall with YouTube, and it's all my fault. Don't get me wrong, but I know that you've it's been a lot of work. But you should be very, very proud to break that 100,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. Like, that's a hell of an accomplishment. The fact that you're over that, you're over 100,000 subscribers, are you not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is a hell of an accomplishment. So I guess my point is that, it's like any business. If you want it to be successful, and like I said, you're running two businesses. You're running a guide business, and you're running your YouTube social media business. This is what it is. I mean, it hopefully, will get easier, but just getting that thing up and running, there's no getting around it. It's taxing. It's incredibly taxing. Yeah. Don't let anybody tell you any different. You're going to have to bust your balls, man. I'm sorry to, just cut it. Like, that's just what it is. And the fact.
Well, taxing is the way to put it too. Cause like some people would say it's a lot of work, and wouldn't say it's necessarily work, cause it's a freaking blast and I love it, but it is taxing. And then you just have to sacrifice some stuff for how long? I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to be like this. I need to figure out a way to come up with a better balance if I want longevity out of all of this. But I don't know. It's a constant refinement, constant trying to just become more efficient with stuff. And at the end of the day, if the better I am at fishing, the more efficient I'm going to be at everything. So I just try to become a better fisherman. But yeah, taxing and sacrifice would be the two things that I would say it's like. So if you want to dive into fishing like this, you better freaking love it. Otherwise, it's going to feel like work. If you want to call it work, I've never worked harder in my life. And that's coming from a guy who was a college wrestler, where my life was nothing but work and being pushed to work even harder all the time. And this is definitely more of a grind, more of taxing than that time frame was.
Wow. So with your guide business now, so are you especially in the summertime, especially up north, Iowa, Minnesota, this is the time when things are really cooking. What is are you busy 5 days a week? I mean, is it just constant, and that's.
If I'm awake, I'm doing something, like whether I'm editing, moving footage, fixing stuff on the boat. That was yesterday, cleaning, or just being on the water. and driving, like I'm driving all the freaking time. So like, that's when I do all my phone calls and things like that, is when I'm on the road, just because it's more efficient. And yeah, I'm always doing something.
And so as far as if you would, give a tip as far as someone who wants to guide us, like this is what I take of it. You've no illusions. You're going to have to work at it. Is there anything, can you even distill it any more than that? I mean,
that's my version of it. Like, it's different for everybody. You can create whatever type of business and run it however you want. Like, that's one beautiful thing about it, is you have this freedom to do it however you want. So if you want to live a life where you're running around 100 miles an hour, you can do that. If you want to slow it down and not function in that way, then you have the ability to do that. And a lot of it's just like where I'm located. Iowa, with the water conditions, sometimes you got to travel a long way, sometimes you don't. And I'm sure a lot of other places are like that, but all the time on the road just leads to less efficiency. And it also leads to more wear and tear on your machines. So that takes away more time too, in money. And so I don't know. It just depends on how you put it together, your system.
Yeah, I think as at the ripe old age of 46 years old, I've felt the need to sometimes pass along a little bit of advice to younger people in the sport, and I've just told people, I'm like, listen, you live the life that's right for you as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, right? And that means that don't get into this hamster wheel scenario where you think you've got to be living a certain way, you've got to be making a certain amount of money to be happy. You got to have things to make you feel like that is success. That is the biggest, I'm going to tell you right now, that is the biggest bunch of bullshit. Happiness has nothing to do with the amount of money you make or the amount of things that you have. Happiness resides in your head, and you're going to be a hell of a lot happier if you find out what your passion is. Not everybody has a passion.
It's so easy to say that, but the reality is it's also human nature to compare yourselves to others. And if you compare yourself to somebody else and you're like, well, they have this, I want that, so I'm not going to be happy until I get it. And then let's say you bust your butt and you get to that point, and then all of a sudden there's a new person to compare yourself to, and that just robs all of your happiness.
I know, but it's a trap. It's a trap.
Well, it is, but it's something that you have to constantly be aware of and remind yourself of. But it's just human nature.
It's totally human nature, and you gotta, I don't know if it requires meditation, you gotta try to break yourself from it, because take it from me, I've been with the most successful people in the business, and let me tell you, how I make it look and how reality is are completely different things. And so, I try to tell people, just, you can live a very modest life and be very happy. And I would say if that, like, there's people that are busting their ass and they think they have to be striving for something. And don't get me wrong, like I am, you have to bust your ass to get, to achieve goals. I mean, that is important. You have to work hard. But don't be thinking that success is, having the biggest truck, the biggest boat, this blah, 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 blah. That's not it. Like, you can, I just think that, I don't want to say contentment. That's not, because I guess there's kind of a, being content is kind of like, oh, you're settling. I'm not saying settling, but you got to find, there's a balance of working so hard to think, you're going for success. If it's something material, like, to me, success is doing something that makes you happy. And to get to that point of doing something that makes you happy, to get to that point, a lot of times you are going to have to bust your ass. And I'm all for it. I feel like I've done that, to a certain extent. I mean, I'm still, listen, life is short, but it's also like a marathon,
Well, there's also perception's a big part of it too. Like, what is busting your ass? Like, your version of busting your ass and my version of busting their ass or your ass are going to be different. like who's however they are different, just know that they are different. And then somebody else's version of hard work is going to be different,
Great point.
or somebody else's version of like time investment is going to be different. It's just the perception is everything. Perception of your life situation. Like you can just change your mind and be happier.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It really didn't work that way.
I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to bring this kind of conversation down a little bit, but I just get, when I'm speaking more to like younger people, like if you're a teenager and I suffered, not me, my family suffered a tragedy 2 years ago. I'm not going to get into it. And it involved an individual and a teenager. And I wish that I had the opportunity to speak with him before this happened and just tell him that, you've got society putting all these things on you, telling you, you got to be this, you got to be that, and you got to do, you don't need to do what you probably think that you need to do right now. You know what I mean? You can live like you can be it's ultimately your happiness resides in your head, and getting to that point is really more of a mindset than anything else. I think your mindset has a ton to do with it. And that doesn't mean you don't have to work hard. And again, that's what does working hard mean, right? But my point is that we all have, I think, without getting too deep here, I think we oftentimes take for granted just how amazing it is to be here. And so, and it can be, for some people, they live a long life. For others, they live a very short life, unfortunately. And, just don't let people tell you, or don't let society tell you what kind of life they think you should be living. Your life is precious. Live the life that's right for you, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. But that's my message for today. Today's podcast, there you go. But moving on, I know you've got to go catch some white bass and striper frankenfish, but yes. I wanted to tell you, listen, dude, you've got over 100,000 YouTube subscribers. That's a hell of an accomplishment, and you're going to keep going up. I know you are. And you have your own fishing show now. You have accomplished that goal. Do you know, dude, I would kill, that is, to have, I had that same dream growing up, I don't know if I had a dream of wanting my own fishing show. I certainly would thought that was a cool idea. I wanted to be a pro bass fisherman, I guess. But to have your own fishing show, which you have, and a successful one at that, you're making money off it, and you'll continue to grow. I mean, that's gotta be incredibly. I think I'm proud of you, and this is our first real big conversation that we've had, and I think that's a hell of an accomplishment, man. Like, it really, really is.
Well, I appreciate it. Honestly, it's hard to know what to say when people say nice things to me. I generally prefer somebody to make fun of me and me give them shit back. That's where I excel the most. So I'm just going to say thanks for the compliments.
So just tell me about, because I don't think people fully understand it. When you're an idiot like myself that's been bumbling around this whole time since, Pete and I started this social media adventure, YouTube venture, whatever the hell we've been doing, podcasting, yada yada yada. It's been this thing has been fits and starts and not being consistent. And one thing I'll tell you, if you want to start have a social media presence and be successful at it, you have to be consistent. I think would be one of the easiest tips to give. As far as it's easy to give that tip, it's harder to actually do that and be consistent. But tell me about just your journey in social media. We've learned about your guiding. Like, now just go through just how you started in social media, and like more specifically your YouTube journey.
Well, I guess you talked about being consistent, and you can say anything you want about me, but I guess consistency is probably the number one thing that I've done. Like, I try to make my videos better, but every Monday, 4 p.m. Central Time, there's going to be a video. Every Thursday, 4 p.m. Central Time, there's going to be a video, and it's been like that for years. Not last summer, but summer before, I was even posting 3 videos a week, and I guess prior to that, I was only posting 1 video a week. But so I went from 1 to 3 to 2. But there has not been a single week in the last like 3 or 4 years. There hasn't been at least 1 video that I've posted, and so yeah, I guess I've just been consistent about it. But I don't know, man. I just try to make it fun. You know, I try to keep it simple, try to make it fun, and it's became something. It quickly became something I wanted to do. I don't feel like there's any obligation. Like, I'm consistent, but I set it up in a way where it's not overly stressful to be consistent. Except this summer, oddly, I've been kind of falling behind the 8 ball, and there's been a lot of days where I've been posting a video that I uploaded that day, and I've never been like that for me. So that's one of the reasons I've been stretched so thin. Usually I have 2 to 10 videos edited prior to when I post a video, so it's not a big deal to be consistent about it. But yeah, I just try to make it fun, like, and simple. That's one nice thing about YouTube. It's your world. You can create however you want, and at least initially, I felt like if the filming prevents me from catching fish, then I'm not going to want to do it. So I need to structure it in a way where it's simple, efficient, to the point, and it's not going to prevent me from catching the fish that I really want. I'll give you an example like this. All my filming gear, it's in this little box right here. That's everything. This and my phone. That's it. So I don't have to carry around a ton of crap. A lot of my mounts are built on my boat, built on my kayak, or I have a tripod that is super small and light and fits in my tackle backpack. So no matter what I'm doing, where I'm doing it, I can film, and it's not a big deal. I hop on somebody else's boat, I can still do my thing. I'm not taking up a shit ton of room. I'm not getting in their way because I don't want to ruin their trip, because it's their trip just as much as it is mine, if not more so. So I just try to keep things easy, you know, and not intrusive.
Yeah, that's so I would say for me, my biggest hindrance to social media, to YouTube, is that I'm coming from that mentality of, oh, you gotta have the lighting, you gotta have all kinds of cameras, you know, it's coming from this traditional video production background, and you don't need any of that to be successful on YouTube and to really grow an audience. And I
think if you have fun and you make the video fun, like you take the footage you have, or at least this is how I approach it. You take the footage you have and you just do the best you can with it. And when your video is quotation marks done, it's just, you've done the best you can in the amount of time you have. And that's what I have. And I'm not going to like dwell on it. Some videos I'm happier about than others, but, at the end of the day, I just do the best I can and make it the best you can.
Do you
live with that?
Do you find that with social media, I think it's called social media, but with also YouTube, that your audience, it's about connection making, and also you could go out. Have you found that even if you're not successful on the water that day, maybe you haven't caught anything, that it doesn't even necessarily matter if you've developed a kind of a loyal fan base? Are you finding that it's more that people have gained a connection with you and just want to kind of go along with your journey? I kind of feel like that's a huge part of all this.
Well, that's 100% part of it, because I mean, people subscribe because they connect to you in some way, and I try to reply to as many comments as I can. For a long time, I replied to almost every single one of them, and this year, because I've been scrambling a little bit more, I've been slacking on that. or not slacking, just unable. Like I used to fish by myself a lot, and now everybody wants to fish with me, which is okay. I enjoy fishing with other people quite a bit. But one nice thing about fishing by myself, other than the fact I enjoy fishing by myself, is when you're sitting there waiting for a flathead to bite for hours and hours, I would respond to all those comments and enjoy doing it. Like it's when somebody says they enjoy your video, that's kind of neat. And I try not to get too high off that, because then you have people who try to tear you down. And if you don't get too high, then you won't get too low. And I don't know, I guess when it comes to the negative ones, I kind of try to keep it in perspective where like none of those people are going to say any of that stuff to my face.
Right.
So who even really cares? Like it goes back to teaching junior high a little bit. Like Sally said this comment on Snapchat about me. And I'm like, well, who really cares? Like it's not true. It's inaccurate. Or even if there's a little bit of truth, they don't have the guts to say it to your face. So are you really going to like give that person, or I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? You're really going to you're going to give that person that power. It's not where I was wanting to go with it, but that's an aspect too. It's like, you're going to give that person power to negatively impact your day when they're not even a person with enough integrity to say something like that to your face. No, I'm not. And I don't recommend anybody else does either.
And I think that too, you know, I can be, I can get wound up. I can be a bit of a hothead at times. And so with social media, you just, those jack nuts that want to post negative comments, you're absolutely right. They would not say that stuff in front of you. They would not say it to your face. There's this level of social media. It's like it's the same thing that happens when you're driving in your car. I mean, we all do it. It's someone cuts you off or something, and you scream at them. But I mean, that's in essence what's kind of happening with social media. Now, if you were out of your car, and that's not to say if someone was you're in a bubble with social media, just like you're in your car. Like it's easier to fire off at people than it would be if you're face to face with someone. And I myself really need to get, and I've gotten better with it. I don't hardly engage with people that are negative anymore on social media. I let it fly. For a while, I thought it was kind of fun to go back and forth. And I don't know, like since the pandemic, dude, I'm like, man, and I'm just like, people need to be better to one another. And so I don't.
Well, you got to keep in mind too, like just because a comment might also initially seem negative doesn't mean that person isn't being sarcastic themselves. Because there's times where I've seen a comment and I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of a jerk thing to say. But then you respond some smart ass comment back and it becomes a little bit of fun back and forth. And then you actually have kind of created an online friend, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
I like the trash talk. And maybe even they meant it in a negative way to start with. And then you say some smart ass comment and they get a kick out of it. And all of a sudden you have a follower. And there's a couple guys that routinely put smart ass comments on my videos. And originally they weren't the kindest comments. And now it just becomes a trash talking thing that I kind of get a kick out of.
So I got a sense of kind of who you were. I mean, this is probably, I don't know. And now I'm you know, talking with you now, I get more of a sense of your personality. But you made a comment. It was I had made this video, and this is just classic Greg Underdahl here, okay? And I hate to use my you know, myself. Is that using myself in like referring to myself in the third person? I guess
third person.
What an asshole.
Yeah.
But I had done a video in my garage about my kayak setup. And again, I'm a jackass. I come from this traditional video production background where everything's... What's that?
You started off and you're like, welcome to my dirty ass garage.
Yeah.
Part stuff.
Yeah. And I remember you made a comment on the video, and it's completely right. I mean... I had 3 cameras. I still to this day. I mean, I've done some more just basic, you know, 1 camera stuff, but I've got this drilled in my head. I'm an idiot. So anyway, I make things way more difficult than they need to be. So I went through my whole kayak fishing setup, my cameras and blah, 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 blah. And you made a comment with like something along the lines of little out of most people's reach or something as far as like just the budget. And I remember kind of feeling like, I don't know whether he's being sarcastic or I can't remember exactly or, but it was kind of, you're ribbing me a little bit. But here's the important point is that it's okay just because it seems like people have gotten, maybe this is all just perception, not reality, but people have gotten more sensitive nowadays about things. And it's just like, you don't know that person's personality. I can be a super jackass asshole at times. And I'm sure like some people, their first impression of me might be like, this guy, ugh,
At least you own it.
Yeah, at least you own it. But at the same time, people aren't, you can't just easily just put a label on people. People are complex, And so I think we all just need to just chill and be more tolerant. And that's why, like, I like people that are a bit feisty, and I get that with you, and I like it, and so I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation because it's given me an opportunity to get to know you better, but also I just think there's a lesson there. Like everybody needs to just have more fun on social media, chill out. But to me, when the negativity gets to a certain, it's easy for some of these people, though. I shouldn't put it that way. It's easy for some people on social media to fire some pretty substantial arrows, and whereas my old self would be like, okay, you're gonna fire an arrow at me, then I'm going a cannon back at you, dude. And so now I'm like. Life is too short. Like, just let it go. I'm not even gonna, at least I want to say I'm not gonna do that anymore. If someone really, I don't know. But to me, it's just like this person, who knows, they might have had a bad day. I think I've gotten better at and those more like pointed barbed, let's put it that, not Barbie. Those more pointed barbed, like comments, I'm just like, I'm not as worried about it anymore. But I digress. You need to go hybrid striped bass fishing. But I do want to get, before we go, so your social media journey, you've got, first of all, before we end this, I want you to kind of promote all your social media and your guiding business. But tell me, and I got a cat that's going crazy. I got this cat, man, that is so vocal. I mean, it's unbelievable. He's right there. He wants to be out all this time. This is a feral cat that we're imprisoning in this house. We never let this cat.
How unbelievable is it really, though?
What's that?
How unbelievable is it really, though? I can think of a lot of things that are unbelievable.
No, there's nothing unbelievable about it. This is just a stupid saying. Phrasing makes no sense whatsoever. But so your journey, social media, and in YouTube, someone starting out, what advice would you give them? So you gave me advice on the guiding aspect. What would you say is a successful social media user? How would you say that? As a successful YouTuber, social media guy, what would be advice to someone that is just either getting into it or has been struggling with it?
I mean, success is a matter of perception, like everything else we were talking about. Like, I don't know how successful I would call myself, like I have so many subscribers, but do subscribers even matter if there's not that many people actually watching? So I'd preface it with that. Success is
now. Wait a minute. I'm gonna stop you right there. I saw one of your more recent videos, and it's got thousands. Like it was just put up. It's got like thousands of views.
Yeah.
Like as an old school video guy, like just the point that the fact that you could put something up and like thousands upon thousands of people are watching it, that is amazing.
No, I think it's really cool, and I appreciate everybody who watches it. My biggest thing is consistency on that. Like, am I consistently putting out videos that people enjoy enough where I'm having so many people engage with the video? It's not like I'm trying to, like, I just want all these views. I want to put out a video that people want to watch, and I want to put out a video that lots of people want to watch. And that's my way of, like, determining success. Like, it's the same in fishing. If I go out flathead fishing and I catch channel cats and no flatheads, is that a success? In my mind, not really. You know, like, success is consistently catching the target species. But anyway, I guess I don't know how relevant that is.
No, that's,
but
I hear you.
Just something that was on my mind as far as that goes. But as far as what leads to success, I guess, are you happy doing what you're doing? Like, are you making videos because you enjoy making videos and making the videos makes you happy? Or are you making the videos because you have this dream of doing this for a living? Because is it really a dream if you're not having fun? Like, you're working towards this goal, but you're not enjoying the process along the way. So is that really a good goal? So I would say, make sure whatever you're doing, you're having a good time, because the ultimate goal is to, do something you're passionate about. So think about why you're doing it and try to twist it in a way that you're going to enjoy the process along the way. Because then at the end of the day, if you're having fun doing it now, like, whether you're good at it, bad at it, you have success or don't have success or whatever, you're having a good time. So in my mind, you're winning the whole time, no matter what the end results are.
Great point. Before, I almost forgot, you've got a podcast. So tell me that, how that started and your journey with that. Because I love podcasting. I actually, in college, had a radio show. I was probably more, well, I guess equally excited about radio and television growing up. And so that's why, like, in college, I had my degree was in broadcasting, because it was just a bigger, umbrella, covered television, also radio. So yeah, I had a radio show in college, and now with podcasting, it's exciting because it's the internet, it's internet radio basically. So how did you get into podcasting, and tell me how that's going for you?
I just like hanging out and talking about fishing. So, and I like podcasts. I listen to podcasts all the time. I'm driving all the time. So if I'm not talking on the phone, I'm probably listening to a podcast. And, my wife kind of pushed me on a little bit. She's like, I think you'd really have fun doing this, and dove into it, and ended up just being a good time. Like, I have fun. I just said, you got to make it fun. And whenever we have podcasts, they're an absolute blast. We don't have any real hard agendas. We'll have some talking points and maybe some questions we'll ask, and we just kind of shoot the shit about whatever pops up. It's fishing based, but we talk about hunting, we talk about trapping, we talk about a whole bunch of all kinds of stuff, and we dive deep in some. We make really immature jokes about others, and we just have a whole lot of fun. It's like sitting on the riverbank, hanging out with your buddies. We just happen to record it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. So how can people find you? Tell me, promote your socials, and also your podcast. So yeah, tell everybody how to find you.
I try to keep it as simple as possible. You type River Certified into Google and stuff starts popping up. So you can type in a River Certified podcast, and then my podcast pops up. You type in River Certified on YouTube, my YouTube channel pops up. Basically, whatever platform you want to find my stuff, you just type in River Certified and it's going to pop up.
All right. Well, there it is. And I just got to tell you, dude, I appreciate you doing this. I've followed you for a long time now, and I say this to everybody, and I could be a bit of a recluse. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of a hybrid between an introvert and an extrovert. I swing, kind of back and forth. But it's fun to fish alone, but there's people that I would really, really love to fish with, and you're one of them. So if I'm ever down in your neck of the woods, or if you're ever up in my neck of the woods, we've got this amazing, there's a lot of stuff I feel very fortunate about.
Dude, you're in the land of 10,000 lakes. You got all kinds of stuff to fish for. I'll be up there this fall at some point in time, and I'll let you know.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, we can do all kinds of fun stuff, but particularly in the fall, the sturgeon, Lake Sturgeon on the St. Croix River is really, really something special. So love for you to come up for that. And I got a boat out in my driveway that's like, hey, when are you going to take me out? Number one, I'm going to get my act together next week. But yeah, would love to have you in the boat or whatever you feel more comfortable in your boat, whatever the case. But sturgeon are a call-in in the fall, so would love to fish with you. But really appreciate you doing this podcast, and catch the hell out of those wipers, buddy.
I'm gonna try, man. I really appreciate you inviting me on. They're all podcasts are good times, so thanks for asking me to be part of a good time.